So, what is phrasing? What is phrasing? What is phrasing? What is phrasing? Phrasing, according to Wikipedia, is the way a musician shapes a sequence of notes in a passage of music to allow expression. This is apparently much like when speaking English, a phrase may be written identically but spoken differently. In other words, it's the way a musician chooses to place the notes in time. Though some musical structures require a pretty rigidly regular rhythmic phrasing like percussion, many elements of solo musical performance allow for more interpretive phrasing. This is actually a concept easier explained through demonstration. For example, you might know the famous Beatles song Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, even without me singing the melody, if I just, say it rhythmically, like Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. But it's not quite the same song if I sing Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, is it? That's an example of phrasing. Here's another one. Perhaps you're familiar with Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five's The Message. The iconic chorus of that song goes, "Don't push me, 'cause I'm close to the edge." Now imagine if it went, "Don't push me, 'cause I'm close to the edge." These are examples of different phrasings that actually drastically alter the way that the music appears to you. They're different situations of the notes or the words within time. Phrasing also occurs pretty naturally in spoken language. Consider this quote from Chopin. "He who phrases incorrectly is like a man who does not understand the language he speaks." And like language, it's important to keep in mind that phrasing is often very contextual. If you hear a musical phrase out of its context, it can feel a bit like hearing a person speaking in the middle of their sentence, or hearing the flow of their sentence in isolation from the conversation it was part of, which tends to be a little disarming. Kind of weird, isn't it? Like if you were to hear... So, why is phrasing important? Phrasing is the single most important element of music. It's often overshadowed by melody, harmony, tone, structure, etc. This is, in my opinion, quite wrong-headed, since few of those elements actually feel important to us in isolation. What's more, some of them actually can't be present without phrasing. Try thinking of a melody without any kind of rhythmic phrasing. Impossible, right? Phrasing is one of the single biggest factors in what makes a particular part of a composition or song stick with us. Consider iconic melodies, choruses, etc. from various songs. And now try thinking of them with different phrasings. It's difficult, isn't it? Because we tend to equate that phrasing with that particular song, or at least that version of it. It's true that covers of pop songs often change phrasing, but that's also precisely how we find it so easy to identify which version of the song it is. Think about the Beatles' version of With a Little Help from My Friends versus Joe Cocker's, or maybe Bob Dylan's version of Highway 61 versus PJ Harvey's. What's more, there are some genres built entirely around the changing of phrasing for interpretive purposes. Jazz and hip-hop are both founded on this. Notice that in jazz, musicians tend to be hyper-conscious of phrasing, carefully reinterpreting the phrasing of old classics to make them their own. Phrasing also accounts for why seemingly unmusical and non-melodic things can still get stuck in your head. The rhythmic phrase alone is strong enough to embed itself in our memory, even when we might not want it to. Now, there are two more important things about phrasing, both concerned on some level with the intersections between poetry and music. I'm going to explore these in two other videos. One of them will focus more on the poetic tradition and formulaic phrasing, and how that can play into songwriting. The other will focus more on how phrasing impacts hip-hop, and I think makes a strong case for why hip-hop is such a fascinating musical art form.